The trendy coffee shop buzzed with activity as Jason Statham stepped inside, blending into the crowd in his casual leather jacket. At the counter, a smug barista barked at customers, his sharp tone creating an air of unease. When Jason reached the front, he calmly ordered a black coffee. The barista sneered, looking Jason up and down. "We don't serve basic people here. Maybe try the gas station down the street," he mocked, earning a few gasps from onlookers. Jason, unfazed, repeated his order. The barista grudgingly made the coffee but deliberately spilled it across the counter. "Clean it up yourself," he muttered smugly. Jason wiped the mess without a word and sat by the window, observing. Over the next hour, he watched the barista insult a struggling single mother and an elderly man. Jason's calm demeanor masked a growing resolve. This disrespect wouldn't go unchallenged. The coffee shop was a beacon of sophistication in the city's bustling downtown, a place where professionals stopped for their morning espresso and socialites gathered for afternoon lattes. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of jazz music. Stylish decor and plush seating gave the shop an inviting charm. Yet, beneath its polished surface, the atmosphere was tense, tainted by the toxic behavior of the man behind the counter. The barista, a young man with a cocky smirk and a sharp tongue, seemed to revel in his role as the self-proclaimed gatekeeper of the establishment. His dismissive glances and condescending remarks created an unwelcoming environment. He barked orders at his co-workers and rolled his eyes at every customer who approached. Those who dared to ask for substitutions or explain their preferences faced outright disdain. Jason Statham sat at a small table by the window, his piercing gaze fixed on the barista. Jason had already experienced the man's sharp tongue when he'd ordered a simple black coffee earlier. Now he watched quietly, a quiet storm brewing behind his calm demeanor. The barista's next target was a young mother juggling a stroller and a diaper bag while trying to soothe her crying baby. "Can you hurry up? This isn't a daycare," he snapped as she fumbled with her wallet. The mother's face flushed with embarrassment as she apologized profusely, clearly flustered. "If you can't handle a simple order, maybe stay home next time," the barista added, his voice dripping with contempt. Jason's jaw tightened, but he remained seated, his eyes never leaving the barista. He watched as the man turned his attention to an elderly gentleman next in line. The old man hesitated as he searched through his wallet for exact change. "Seriously?" the barista groaned loudly, leaning against the counter. "You're holding up the line. Just use a card like everyone else." The man, visibly embarrassed, fumbled even more, his hands shaking as he tried to hurry. The other customers shifted uncomfortably, stealing glances at Jason, who sat silently. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes told a different story, calculated, observant, and unwavering. It was clear he wasn't just watching the scene unfold. He was assessing every detail, every word, and every interaction. As the barista continued his tirade, Jason noticed the uneasy expressions of the shop's other employees. A shy junior barista, barely out of her teens, worked tirelessly in the background, her head down as she avoided her superior's wrath. Customers whispered among themselves but said nothing, afraid of becoming the next target of the barista's scorn. Jason's patience was nearing its end. His sharp mind had pieced together the barista's pattern of behavior, targeting the vulnerable, intimidating the timid, and thriving on the power trip of unchecked arrogance. Jason's fingers tapped lightly on the edge of his coffee cup, a subtle sign that the calm before the storm was about to end. As the barista turned his back to refill the coffee machine, Jason rose from his seat, his imposing presence immediately drawing attention. The barista hadn't yet realized that his reign of rudeness was about to come crashing down, but the subtle shift in the room's energy hinted at what was to come. For now, Jason remained silent, his resolve stronger than ever. He wasn't just going to address the behavior. He was going to make a statement the barista would never forget. Jason calmly rose from his seat, his steely gaze fixed on the barista as he approached the counter. The air grew thick with tension, and the once chatty coffee shop fell silent. Customers glanced at one another, sensing something significant was about to happen. Jason leaned against the counter, his voice even but commanding. "I'd like to speak to the manager." The barista sneered. "What's the problem now? You didn't like your coffee." He made no move to call anyone, instead crossing his arms and glaring at Jason. Jason didn't waver. "The manager," he repeated, his tone cutting through the barista's smug demeanor like a knife. Reluctantly, the barista stepped away and disappeared into the back. Moments later, a middle-aged man with a self-important stride emerged. The manager, dressed in a crisp white shirt and tie, wore a smug expression that mirrored the barista's. He scanned Jason with an air of disdain. "I hear there's an issue," the manager said, his tone dismissive as if he'd already decided Jason's concerns were unimportant. Jason glanced at the barista, then back at the manager. "Your employee has been insulting customers all morning," he said firmly. "I've watched him berate a mother with her child and humiliate an elderly man trying to pay for his coffee. This behavior is unacceptable." The manager raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "We're a high-end establishment," he replied coolly. "Our staff has a lot of responsibilities, and we can't cater to every little complaint. Maybe you're just not used to how things work here." Jason's jaw tightened, but he remained composed. "High-end or not, respect is the bare minimum. Your barista has been out of line all day, and you've done nothing about it." The manager chuckled, clearly unimpressed by Jason's calm yet firm demeanor. "Look, if you don't like the service, you're free to leave. We don't need every customer to stick around. And honestly, I think you're making a bigger deal out of this than it needs to be." Jason's eyes narrowed slightly, but he maintained his composure. "So you're condoning his behavior?" he asked, his voice low and measured. The manager shrugged. "He's under a lot of stress. If he's a little rough around the edges, that's just part of the job. Maybe you should cut him some slack instead of playing the hero." The other customers murmured in disbelief. Some looked outraged, while others shook their heads in disappointment. Jason, however, remained unshaken. He stared at the manager for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before reaching into his pocket and pulling out his phone. The manager smirked, mistaking Jason's calm demeanor for defeat. "Calling someone to complain," he taunted. "Go ahead. I doubt anyone will care." Ignoring the jab, Jason tapped on his phone and made a call. The barista and manager exchanged a glance, their smug confidence intact, while Jason spoke in a low voice. "It's time," he said simply before ending the call. The suspense in the room was palpable. Customers whispered among themselves, trying to guess what Jason was up to. Even the barista seemed uneasy now, though he masked it with bravado. "What, you calling for backup?" he jeered, laughing nervously. Jason slid his phone back into his pocket and looked directly at the manager. "You've had your chance to fix this," he said quietly. "Now it's out of your hands." Minutes later, the sound of a luxury car pulling up outside drew everyone's attention. A sleek black vehicle parked right in front of the shop, and a well-dressed woman stepped out. Her presence was commanding, her tailored suit and confident stride leaving no doubt about her authority. She pushed open the coffee shop's door, and the room fell silent once more. The manager's face paled as recognition dawned. "Ms. Carter," he stammered, his arrogance melting into nervousness. The woman, the CEO of the coffee chain, didn't spare him a glance. Her eyes locked on Jason, and she extended a hand with a warm smile. "Mr. Statham," she greeted him, "I hope everything is to your satisfaction." The revelation hit the room like a thunderclap. The barista froze, his cocky smirk replaced by panic, while the manager looked like he wanted to disappear. Jason shook the CEO's hand and turned to face the stunned staff. "Not quite," Jason said, his voice calm but laced with authority. "There's a lot to fix here, starting with respect." The CEO nodded. "Say no more. I trust you'll handle it as the new majority owner." Gasps rippled through the room. The barista and manager stood frozen, their arrogance completely shattered. Jason's calm yet decisive actions had turned the tables, and now they were about to face the consequences. The sound of a luxury car door slamming shut outside the coffee shop reverberated through the air, silencing the hum of conversation inside. The sleek black vehicle had caught everyone's attention. Customers craned their necks to get a better look as a strikingly dressed woman stepped out, her presence exuding power and authority. As the woman entered the coffee shop, her confident strides echoed against the tiled floor. She paused at the entrance, surveying the scene before her. The customers, now realizing the gravity of the moment, whispered in hushed tones. The manager stood frozen, his arrogance melting away into palpable unease. The woman's gaze landed on Jason, and a knowing smile spread across her face. "Mr. Statham," she greeted him warmly, extending her hand. Her tone was professional yet familiar. "I trust you've had the opportunity to assess the situation?" The room erupted into gasps as the pieces began to fall into place. The barista's smug demeanor was instantly replaced with panic, and the manager's jaw dropped in disbelief. The woman's gaze landed on Jason, and a knowing smile spread across her face. "Mr. Statham," she greeted him warmly, extending her hand. Her tone was professional yet familiar. "I trust you've had the opportunity to assess the situation?" The room erupted into gasps as the pieces began to fall into place. The barista's smug demeanor was instantly replaced with panic, and the manager's jaw dropped in disbelief. Jason shook her hand firmly, nodding. "I have, Ms. Carter. Unfortunately, it's worse than I expected." His words were calm, but they carried an undeniable weight. Ms. Carter turned to the stunned staff. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, addressing the room, "allow me to introduce Mr. Jason Statham, the new majority owner of this coffee chain." The revelation hit like a bombshell. Customers murmured in shock, their eyes darting between Jason and the trembling staff. The barista's face turned ashen, and he took an involuntary step back, muttering, "This can't be real." The manager, now visibly sweating, stammered, "And majority owner? I didn't know." Jason raised a hand, silencing him with a simple gesture. "You didn't know because I wanted to see how things operated here firsthand," he said coolly. "And I must say, I'm deeply disappointed." Jason gestured toward the barista, his voice unwavering. "You've insulted customers, spilled coffee deliberately, and shown a complete lack of respect. Your actions don't represent what this brand stands for." Turning to the manager, Jason's tone became even sharper. "And you've not only ignored this behavior but condoned it. Instead of addressing the issues, you chose to dismiss legitimate complaints and show contempt for the very people who keep this business running, our customers." The manager's mouth opened and closed as he tried to form a response, but no words came out. Jason's piercing gaze swept over both men. "Respect is the foundation of any successful business," he said. "Without it, everything falls apart. And today, you've shown me exactly what happens when arrogance replaces respect." Ms. Carter stepped forward. "Mr. Statham, how would you like to proceed?" she asked, her tone professional but supportive. Jason crossed his arms and took a moment to survey the room. His eyes lingered on the single mother who had been humiliated earlier, now holding her baby close, and the elderly man who was quietly sipping his coffee, still visibly shaken. "I'd like you to observe their behavior a little longer," Jason finally said, addressing Ms. Carter. "Let's see how they handle themselves when they think the spotlight's off. Sometimes, people show their true colors when they believe no one's watching." Ms. Carter nodded in agreement, her sharp eyes locking onto the staff. "Consider it done," she said. Jason turned back to the manager and barista, his expression unreadable. "You have one final chance to show me you're capable of change," he said, his voice steady. "But let me be clear, your actions will determine your future here." The barista swallowed hard, nodding quickly, while the manager could only stammer, "Why yes, sir." Jason's presence was magnetic, his calm authority commanding the respect and attention of everyone in the room. As he stepped back to observe, customers watched with bated breath, sensing that the next few moments would define the coffee shop's future. Over the next hour, Ms. Carter remained in the shop, quietly observing the staff's interactions with customers. The barista, clearly rattled, attempted to be more polite but struggled to hide his frustration. The manager, meanwhile, lingered nervously near the counter, unsure of what to do. Jason, sitting at a corner table, sipped his coffee and watched intently. His sharp eyes missed nothing, from the way the barista fumbled with orders to the way the manager avoided any real engagement with the customers. Finally, Ms. Carter approached Jason, her expression thoughtful. "I think we've seen enough," she said. Jason nodded and stood, his imposing figure drawing the attention of everyone in the room. He walked back to the counter, where the barista and manager stood frozen in place. "It's clear to me that change is necessary," Jason said, his voice firm. "Effective immediately, you," he pointed to the barista, "are terminated. Your behavior has no place in this establishment." The barista's face crumpled, and he stammered, "Please, Mr. Statham, I didn't mean to." Jason cut him off with a sharp glance. "Disrespecting customers isn't a mistake, it's a choice. And today, you've made too many bad choices." Turning to the manager, Jason's tone softened slightly but remained authoritative. "As for you, I'm giving you an opportunity to learn. You'll be demoted to janitorial duties. Take this time to reflect on what it means to lead with respect and integrity." The manager nodded meekly, murmuring, "Thank you, sir." Jason then turned to a shy junior employee who had been diligently working in the background. "You've shown dedication and respect to both customers and your colleagues," Jason said. "Starting today, you're the new manager of this location." The young employee's eyes widened in shock and gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Statham. I won't let you down," he said earnestly. Jason gave a small nod. "I believe you." Addressing the room, Jason concluded, "This shop will now stand for respect, quality, and kindness. Starting today, we'll be offering free coffee to frontline workers and single parents every Friday. This isn't just about coffee, it's about community." The room erupted into applause as customers cheered Jason's decisive actions. The single mother wiped away a tear, and the elderly man smiled warmly. Jason turned to the former barista and manager one last time. "Remember, respect costs nothing," he said. "But arrogance, that can cost you everything." With that, Jason stepped back, leaving Ms. Carter to finalize the changes. As he exited the coffee shop, the air felt lighter, as though a dark cloud had finally lifted. As silence gripped the coffee shop, all eyes were on Jason Statham. The room seemed to hold its breath as he walked toward the counter, his calm yet commanding presence enough to make even the manager and barista fidget nervously. The CEO stood quietly in the background, arms crossed, observing the unfolding drama with a knowing look. Jason turned his gaze toward the barista, whose smug expression from earlier had now melted into an awkward, panicked smile. "You," Jason began, his voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the tension, "have no place working in customer service." The barista stammered, I didn't know who you were." "If I had—" Jason raised a hand to cut him off. "It's not about knowing who I am. It's about how you treat people, every person that walks in here. Respect should not depend on status, appearance, or anything else. It's basic decency." Turning to the manager, Jason's glare intensified. "And you," he continued, "had every chance to correct this behavior. Instead, you encouraged it. You dismissed valid complaints and created an environment where people feel unwelcome. That stops today." Jason's words carried weight, and the staff and customers hung on to every syllable. He turned back to the barista and said, "You're fired. Effective immediately. Collect your things and leave." The barista froze, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "You can't do this. I've been here for years," he protested. Jason didn't flinch. "Years of bad behavior do not earn you leniency. They make your dismissal long overdue. Get out." Realizing he had no ground to stand on, the barista grabbed his belongings and stormed out of the shop, his face red with humiliation. The manager, who had been standing rigid with shock, suddenly found Jason's gaze fixed squarely on him. "As for you," Jason said, his tone laced with finality, "you're being demoted to janitorial duties. Maybe cleaning up after others will remind you of the importance of humility and respect." The manager's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious," he muttered weakly. Jason stepped closer, his imposing presence making the man shrink back. "I don't think I need to repeat myself," Jason said, his voice icy. "Take this as an opportunity to reflect and rebuild yourself. It's more than you deserve after today's performance." With that, Jason shifted his attention to the remaining staff. Among them stood a junior employee, a quiet and diligent young woman who had been working in the background, clearly uncomfortable with the toxic behavior of her superiors. Jason gestured toward her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she replied, startled but polite. Jason nodded. "Emily, I've been watching how you handled yourself today. You've been professional, kind, and efficient, even under difficult circumstances. That's the kind of leadership this place needs." Emily's eyes widened as Jason continued. "From this moment on, you're the manager. I trust you to set a better example and help rebuild the reputation of this shop." The announcement was met with murmurs of approval from the other employees and customers. Emily blinked back tears, her voice trembling as she said, "Thank you, Mr. Statham. I won't let you down." Jason offered her a small smile. "I know you won't." But he wasn't finished yet. Turning to the room, he addressed everyone present. "This coffee shop is about to change. From now on, we're implementing new policies. First, frontline workers and single parents will receive free coffee, no strings attached. Second, customer service will be held to the highest standard. Respect and kindness will be the foundation of everything we do here. And third," Jason paused, glancing toward Emily, "our staff will be treated with the same respect we expect them to show to customers. Toxicity and arrogance have no place here. Not in this shop, not anywhere." The customers erupted into applause, the tension in the air dissolving into an atmosphere of hope and excitement. Jason looked around the shop, his gaze landing briefly on the single mother from earlier, who smiled gratefully, and the elderly man, who gave him a small nod of approval. As the applause died down, Jason added, "To everyone here today, I apologize for what you experienced. It wasn't right, and it won't happen again. Thank you for your patience." With the barista gone, the former manager cleaning up tables in stunned silence, and Emily stepping into her new role, the shop had undergone a complete transformation in a matter of minutes. Before leaving, Jason approached the single mother and handed her a voucher for free coffee for the next month. "You've got enough on your plate," he said with a kind smile. "Consider this one less thing to worry about." He then walked over to the elderly man and helped him carry his tray to a table. "Enjoy your coffee, sir," Jason said warmly. As Jason made his way toward the door, Emily called out, "Mr. Statham." He turned, and she added, "Thank you for believing in me. We'll make you proud." Jason gave her a small wave and replied, "I'm counting on it." With that, he stepped outside, leaving behind a coffee shop that was no longer just a business. It was now a place where people felt valued and respected. And in his signature style, Jason had once again turned an injustice into an opportunity for change. The atmosphere in the coffee shop had shifted entirely. Where there had once been tension and frustration, there was now a sense of relief and optimism. As the disgraced barista stormed out, the customers couldn't help but clap. Some even cheered, their applause echoing through the space. "About time someone stood up to him," muttered one regular customer, shaking his head. The former manager, now relegated to janitorial duties, stood quietly in the corner, absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. His face was pale, his posture defeated. While his arrogance had crumbled, there was a glimmer of realization in his expression. He began picking up a broom, a clear sign that he accepted his fate, though the weight of his mistakes hung heavily on his shoulders. Jason, now seated at a table with Emily, the newly promoted manager, leaned forward, speaking to her with the same calm authority that had carried him through the entire confrontation. "Emily, this isn't just about a title," he began. "It's about setting an example. For the staff, for the customers, for yourself. Leadership is not about control. It's about respect and accountability." Emily nodded, hanging on to every word. "I understand, Mr. Statham. I'll do my best to create a positive environment here. The team and the customers deserve it." Jason smiled slightly. "Good. Remember, people come here not just for coffee but for the experience. Treat everyone who walks in that door like they matter because they do. And if you ever find someone acting like that barista or that manager," he paused, letting his words sink in, "handle it before it becomes a problem." "I will," Emily promised, determination shining in her eyes. Meanwhile, the single mother Jason had defended earlier approached the table, holding her baby, now calm and resting in her arms. "Excuse me, Mr. Statham," she said softly. I just wanted to thank you. People like him. She glanced at the door where the barista had exited. They make it hard to even go out sometimes. What you did today, it meant a lot. Jason waved her off with a small, kind gesture. You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of treatment. Everyone deserves respect, especially someone working as hard as you are. The elderly man, who had earlier struggled with his wallet, also approached. Son, I've been coming here for years, and I've never seen anything like what you did today. You've given this place a fresh start. Jason shook the man's hand firmly. Thank you. That's the goal, to make sure everyone feels welcome. The ripple effect of Jason's actions wasn't confined to the shop. News of the incident quickly spread online. A few customers who had witnessed the confrontation posted their stories on social media, accompanied by photos of Jason speaking to Emily and helping customers. Within hours, the posts were gaining traction, drawing attention to both the toxic behavior that had been addressed and the inspiring changes Jason had made. One caption read, Jason Statham just turned a bad coffee experience into a masterclass on leadership. Respect costs nothing, and this man proved it today. The CEO of the coffee chain, who had stayed in the background for most of the ordeal, stepped forward to shake Jason's hand. You've not only salvaged this shop's reputation, but you've also given the entire brand a new direction. We'll be implementing these changes across all locations. Jason nodded. Make sure you do. The problem here wasn't just one person, it was a culture. Fixing that starts at the top. Before leaving, Jason addressed the remaining staff. This is your chance to prove that this place can be more than just a coffee shop. Work together, respect each other, and treat every customer like they're the reason you're here, because they are. If you do that, I promise you, this place will thrive. The staff, inspired by his words, nodded enthusiastically. Emily stepped forward to thank him once more, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. We won't let you down, Mr. Statham. I'll make sure of it. Jason gave her a brief smile and a nod. I believe you. As Jason walked out of the shop, he noticed the single mother helping the elderly man with the door. The sight brought a sense of quiet satisfaction. Today hadn't just been about firing a barista or demoting a manager. It had been about restoring a sense of decency and respect. By the time Jason got into his car and drove away, the coffee shop felt like a different place altogether. Inside, customers lingered a little longer, chatting warmly with the staff. And in the weeks to come, the shop's transformation would stand as a testament to the power of standing up for what's right. Respect is not a privilege. It is a basic human right. Jason's actions that day in the coffee shop were a reminder of how powerful a little respect and humility can be. No one, whether a customer or an employee, deserves to be demeaned or belittled. The barista's arrogance and the manager's complacency had created a toxic environment, one that Jason dismantled in a matter of minutes, not through anger but through decisive action and unwavering principles. By standing up for those who were mistreated, a struggling mother, an elderly customer, and even the hard-working staff who had been overlooked, Jason didn't just fix a moment. He changed the culture of the shop itself. Emily's promotion symbolized a new era of kindness and respect, and the shop's new policies ensured that those values would endure. As Jason walked out of the shop that day, the air seemed lighter, the smiles on the faces of staff and customers more genuine. His parting words to Emily echoed in her mind, "Respect costs nothing, but its value is immeasurable." The ripples of Jason's intervention extended far beyond the walls of that coffee shop. Customers left inspired, staff felt empowered, and even the once arrogant manager reflected on his mistakes. Jason Statham may have left quietly, but the impact of his actions left an indelible mark, a testament to the power of respect and the difference one person can make.